one is not a Buddhist, how can he practice? Is it possible to practice as well?
Practice meditation?
Yes.
Macam isi micit nangba mena, micit nangba mena, tadi kom gap tuh sarve nangba mena yang kom gap thai yorve.
곰을 치와 남바요 말이 곰 치바데 세부 내록 따로래 랑도 세부 내록 감성 생기 생고래 세민이 감성라 야요 말이 조카 종이 감성 생기 담지 내와서 디 사지가라고 세부 내록도 따로래 설명 좀 보고요.
So when it comes to meditation or practice, then there is no Buddhist or non-Buddhist, because what we call meditation is to look at your own mind. And all sentient beings in the three realms of samsara have a mind, and only if they wouldn't have a mind, then we if there would be no mind, we couldn't even talk about the three realms of samsara. There would be nothing there. But we have the desire realm and the form realm and the formless realm. And the Buddha had said, may all beings of the three realms have happiness and the causes of happiness. And so because of that, it shows that they have a mind. And because they have a mind, anyone who has a mind can look at their mind.
But is it necessary to start? So if you want to start meditate with this preliminary practice Nandro, or you can do a retreat without it and go to the higher level?
Tirita yina yang kisi nangba mena rawa nangba mena tini ngundu riba tamenda chigi marwa tini nangba mena ngundu riba majena yang tini takas kom gyaptang tini ta sa thotse kom gyaptang yora sa kya chembola sopa tini kom gyaptu ribe
ngundu shibade chue tangje de ngundu roa yinping lo semlo da gona yinping lo ngundu do go ale 강의들이 쉽게 탐식을 저도 동해와 동해가 자와 강리 나래 나 향바지 오늘 나 매와야 말해 요와야 말해 세군대로 해야 예를 들니 주 나한테 매와 줘고나 인핑을 놓고 매와 줘는 실제로 줘서 말했지 그 인핑을 놓고 맞지와 제가 탑 로도나 봐 제가 제가 뭐냐부터 탑을 사촉 제가 뭐냐부터 탑을 사족의 생공 공리 공도 배워서 상하지 라지는 비긴데 사우 요거 매도 대상진 도로 생구 내려오고 타자와 탑을 그 무슨 맞게 좀 또 그것도 무슨 장가적인 이거 말이야 그것도 로는 내가 가르치는 지를 핑고서 로데게 이 시합 연구요 그것도 무슨 방향 뭐지 지를 핑고서 로데 나도 좀 연락이 다들 좀 연락이는 핑고서 로데 새끼 상태를 요래 생기인데 나도 맞으면 새끼 탑재를 핑고서 로데 대상적 생기 너는 인핑을 로데 오늘들이 로데 있는 연구 요래 인핑을 로면은 뭐좀 먼저 좀 지가는 지어서만 더 딱딱한 핑고 말이야.
So actually what we call the preliminaries, the preliminary or the mundro of all the Dharma practice is the altruistic mind. And if you really want to see the nature of your mind, you actually must have an altruistic mind as a preliminary. So all sentient beings in the 6 realms of samsara experience suffering. And the root of that suffering is a self. It is that concept of an I. And actually an I, a self, does not exist. There is no self, but also it is not that there is nothing. There is the natural state of the mind. And in order to understand it, we need to cultivate an altruistic mind. And there is no other way to actually see the nature of the mind. And so therefore, the Buddha gave a skillful means, a method to cultivate the altruistic mind, where it has not yet arisen, and that is to reflect on the 4 thoughts that turn the mind. And then secondly, to not let it decline where it has arisen, and that is to cultivate bodhicitta. And then to increase bodhicitta, that is the path of the Vajrayana, where we practice the deities. And so in this way, it is just like the growing of a flower from a seed into a sprout into a flower. Actually, we focus on the numbers of accumulations when we practice the Ngundro. But even if you don't know anything about the Ngundro, even if you don't know anything about those accumulations and numbers, whatever you do, if you just have an altruistic mind that wishes to benefit others, it is actually enough. If you only have an altruistic mind, that is kind of the preliminary. And that is actually something that all sentient beings have. It is because they have a mind, naturally the nature of that mind is to have a care, an altruistic mind towards others to some extent, but only when one has a wish to benefit all beings, then it is called bodhicitta. So really the actual preliminary is the altruistic mind, and if you do not have this altruistic mind as a preliminary, then even if you accumulate hundreds of thousands of 300, 400,000 of Ngundro accumulations, it's really of not much benefit. Certainly not in this life, maybe in future lives.
다 코도 남바 잡아 상계래 마서 생기래 사제 가래라 버려 샘기 남네 상계니 샘기 탐지 저도 잡아 상계래 공장 로버를 좀 접자지 좀 도지 좀 딱 봤은 거야 책 대징 아마도 지라 쓴 거. 저도 담아 사기래. 먼저 로버트 미 로버트 막 가래리. 다지 미디데 로버트 말이. 대 유는 고 차선 새끼 탐지 사제 여버리 잡고 쳐보나지. 오늘들 로버트 막 가래. 다 이제 나라 차 이는 당들이 천 차롱라고 차선. 다 새끼 탐지 동네 시고는 갈고리. 네. 다디도 시고리. 다디도 뉴모 뭐 제적 다 통거. 뉴모 다디. 다를 차니 들이 뉴모 봐. 다뭐 뉴모 독성지. 들이 독나치. 들이 뉴모 독기. 때리를 독독이 뉴모 뭐 제적 동지 와리 질. 내가 뛰는 로아를 독. 샘적으로 로아를 독 차송을 왜. 들이 담고 다디 저거 다 마셨다. 뭐냐든 세분내로 문에 가르리 때나 다다는 게 나오냐 맞아 통고요. 대회는 들이 딱 나오냐 맞아 매바거나 들이 다다다 단지도 미술아 차오름도 시원을 가리 철 차노래. 상바도 이제 도다 그래. 단지도 나도 잡았다 그래. 딱 봐서 자감은 자감도 내켜요. 진짜 당시 지금 고와는 차오름도 고로를 놓고요. 유티스 구구 송네 코브 장소 류닝 코와지 생코랑 사제는 내가 박차를 류를 딱 코고 오래 류코고 오래 생제 코랑 코야요 말이지 오다 그게나 이다 상바다 힘이 되니 다디 내가 차서 상바지 제담체나들이 세비 자치고 차고 오래 대 차서들이 뒤까지 저를 세는 때 오 세비 나가다지 차대요 들이 남과를 이메와 하고 동당도 내방거니 또 이메 동당도 내방 통지기 사바체메바 힘게 체메바 진짜 체메다나 샘도 잡을을 잡고 차고 사운드 잡을링은 차대요 대체 샘을 때로 샘 남과는 이고 오또 샘은 이미도 샘 너무 저기 뭐 이러는 코디에 덕기들이 너무 약하다 그래 이 차도 없어 이제 저밖에 하고 나중에 이메와 하고 때도 남고 되면 통제를 나가래. 뭐도 생고 내려옵시나 이메와 하고 두고 해. 또나 다들 발피에 강 차롱 조선 잡지 쳐도 쭉 차서 사제 생기 찍게 기와데 차롱도 쳐지 쭉 봐야 되려고 그래.
So when you ask a question about what is meditation, often when we try to figure it out, we are asking questions about like a tree, for example. We are asking questions about the branches and the leaves of the tree, but we do not inquire into the roots, the essence of the tree. So when it comes to meditation practice, we should not focus on the various branches and so on, but really look at the essence of what is it actually, why are we meditating, what is the purpose of meditation. The purpose of meditation, of all practice, is to ultimately realize the nature of your mind. And so how is that mind then? So from our ordinary perspective, now first it seems that there is a duality. We for example, speak about a duality of sentient beings and Buddhas. And then, however, the Buddha actually, from the Buddha's perspective, the Buddha had said all beings are really Buddhas. You all are actually Buddhas. Beings are only obscured by temporary stains. And for example, this quote by the Buddha is something that Druvang Rinpoche had always mentioned. Actually, aside from these two lines here, he didn't say much else. But this is what he always said. He said, you all are really Buddhas, only obscured by temporary stains. And so that temporary stain is that belief in a duality of self and other. And because we have habituated to that for a very long time, it becomes very solid. So sentient beings therefore appear like ice blocks floating on the ocean being just like the Buddha mind. And temporarily we believe in the duality of self and other, and therefore we are attached to ourselves and we have an aversion against the other. And this belief makes the mind become like a block of ice, and therefore we suffer. And so if sentient beings want to become free of suffering, they must separate themselves from self-grasping. And all of the various afflictive emotions, the 84,000 different afflictions, come from the root of self-grasping. It is because of this fundamental attachment to the self. So first there is that, and then from that arise the 3 poisons, the 5 poisons, the 6 afflictive emotions, and then these 6 afflictions multiply, each combined with each other. So in the end we have 84,000 afflictions. And for this reason there is this diversity of sentient beings in the 6 realms of samsara, even though they have a single mind. So ultimately we need to free ourselves from self-grasping, and that is the point of meditation. We free ourselves from self-grasping when we see the nature of the mind. And so when you look at the mind right now, what you see is this idea of an I, a self. So that is like this ice block. And when this ice block melts, then eventually it will melt into the ocean. In order to melt, it needs heat or warmth. And the warmth that makes it melt is love and compassion. The grasping at a self is like the weather getting cold. And then it always stays in a freezer, for example. It always remains cold. And in that way we continue to circle like ice blocks in the ocean of samsara. Chigten Sumgön had said that what wanders in samsara is actually the body. It is that the mind temporarily grasps at various habitual imprints that identifies with the body, create this body, and this body created by imprints wanders in samsara, circles in samsara. But actually the mind itself never really goes anywhere, it never circles in samsara. And so it is through love and compassion that we can destroy self-grasping. The stronger your love, the more vast will be your mind. And then at the moment when the mind is vast, when you look at that mind, it becomes just like space. And then you understand that there is no duality. And when you see that there is no delineation, no separation, then you have understood the ultimate truth. And that is based on the preliminary of boundless love and compassion. Boundless love and compassion arises, and you look at your mind. For example, when you want to, you think, may all beings in this world be happy. In that moment, your mind actually pervades the entire world, and the ice block of self-grasping melts, and you see the space-like nature of the mind. That there's no duality. So all of samsara and nirvana is just like one tree that has a single root, a single base, and then many branches and leaves and so on. And all of these branches and leaves are actually confusion. What we really need to look at is the basis, is the root. And that root is non-duality, that there is no duality between self and other. So this is why we meditate, in order to see the nature of that mind. When you see it, you see there's no duality. So basically what the Buddha had said is that the mind of all the Buddhas is like an ocean, the mind of sentient beings is like ice blocks. So what the Buddha introduced us to is that this ice block is actually water if it melts.
Well, in the world there are so many religions, and how to unite all these different religions and have peace in the world.
Ni tengzam zamboling la chulok mambo yorwa la. Tini chulok mambo na pi mathu batupa mambo yorwa. Tini ta tunde ta chulok sama tunde chia. Tini ta tupa me bati shiva nyam dutia tapshi khare yoris.
다 매번 치유는 촉박하나요 말이에요. 다 요소는 다 출력되는 촉박인 거예요. 상하지는空中되게 강에 등에가 싸워 강에서 등에가 싸워 나디네 송송. 야, 나이 소리는 토만이 돼요. 등에 말이 나대도 용 조고 사지 인피스면 총고. 내 날이 소리는 뭐 그냥 무시지. 그냥 출력다. 뭐 출력 그 출력. 그래서 마당 집에 추적되나 이 양떡과 용을 요구요 말했잖아. 대중이 뭐 하고 그러나 추록시 봐도 갈래 피는 것도 다 상관한 거라. 추록시 봐도 새끼가 등에 매봤던 거 대하고 그래. 가다 나는 새끼 떠도 찍봐야 새끼 떠도 들어오게 나가 갈라라고 싸 나가 커바라고 조심 거래. 나 여기 주대 들어오게 찍봐 차도 그래. 새끼를 피고 무슨 줄럭과 참막을 잡으려고 뭐 샘을 피고 너 샘을 피는 거리 보고도 샘 잡으려고 미샘 삼지 줘도 그래서 내가 그저 삼지 줄럭 참막 삼지 쏘시나 참만 죽고 찍자요 말이야 나 쏘시나 이 나와라 죽어요 그래 막다 그거다 네 제자죠 나와라 좀 뭐 저때 차고 나도 무슨 다른 좀 와서 요 말이야
if there any religion that where there is no grasping at the self, when there is no grasping at the self, then there is no conflict between any religion. And if there is a self, then there's always conflict between religions. It is that the root of all suffering is that self-grasping, also in the secret mantra teachings and so on. Also in the 37 practices it says, all suffering without exception comes from wishing for one's own happiness. The perfect Buddhas arise from the altruistic mind. Actually, Rinpoche says all he really knows is the 37 practices. So for example, whatever we practice, whatever religion we practice, if we practice it tainted by a self, with a selfish mind, it will not be a genuine practice. The fault really comes down to this self-grasping, the selfish mind, and actually the point of religion is to benefit. So we need to really again go to the root and ask, why are we actually practicing this religion? What's the point? What's the benefit of any religion in the world? That's something we have to think about. Why do we need any religion? We practice our religion because we want to free ourselves from suffering. So this is important to understand. For example, when we look at the difference between ourselves and animals, animals, for example, also know how to find their own food and make their nest and so on. And they know how to do various things. And likewise, any religion that we practice, only striving for ourselves, is not much different than the striving of an animal, for example. So what is really the point of religious practice? It is to benefit all the people in the world. And how can we benefit them? We benefit them if we help them cultivate love in their hearts. And that is the only cause of happiness. And so if all religions would consider that as most important, then there would be no conflict between religions. But if we consider ourselves as most important, then even if you're Buddhist, it will lead to difficulties. Then even within Buddhists, there is fighting and conflict. For example, we are fighting about who gets which seat or which throne. This is my throne, this is his throne, and so on. And then only faults come from that. So all of the faults, actually, all of the conflict comes from the self-grasping mind.
He's a very great teacher. How a teacher chooses his students and how a student chooses his teacher.
Ini Rinpoche lama tsachen Buddhist. Ini sugi yoraba lama takche chigori rwa damgori. Ini lama takche chigori damgori rwa. Ini lama takche chitan khande do. Ini da lama takche chitan khande do.
Kasa kate lama no takche cheba chigori. Guwa chigori kashere gogori. Mune sino takche toya yobari. Mune tata takche tongne. Lama rana takche tangori. Nga lama reso ye chushi kalche gori. Chushi bada karere. O senji pingori. 가이그 피고 메기 세면 찌와로부터 버려. 저 동에 참아 다래 송노와리. 저 나디 진이 보는 거 삼바다 힘게 되면 오 소소로 삼바다 힘게 피송 메디를 삼바다 힘게 있잖아. 이런 거네디 생고 내가 찾고 그래. 내가 자공이 야전 땡땡 쉬어. 쳐지 맞지 내가 찾고. 왜 대자면 말라마야 공문이 말이. 미치 내가 몇개 쫓았다. 내가 로지 써봐도 내 동안에 로지 쳤대. 뒤를 뛰니 등이 많고 용이 등이를 다 짭찍겨 용 말이지. 오, 다 꼰초서 못 잡수가 땅이야 버렸어. 오, 등이 오늘 가르쳐서 오, 내려했어. 사직을 남도 없어. 등이 말이 나대도 나디는 때는 유무 맞지 내사. 마진 말랑 그좀 뭐야. 내려서 봤더니 뭐게 소타게 저기 뒤내지 리제레랑미 마그도 정말 특정 마찰 이제 나선에서 로다 때려 타고더니 능이지 하고서 새 등에도 용나 오 등에도 수시에서 유모에서 유모 가도 유모 다다는 라주도 자코리 새 자쿠주아레 얘는 하고도 띠띠잖아 다음에 등에도 내 장소 요리 상다 내 다도를 시작이 제반을 이리 또 하나를 집어버렸다. 수비 용기 하고서 죽은 거 하고서 얘 하고 뒤냥 용쳐서 시작하면 라마도 뭔가 집어 용기 강해요 말이지. 오 라마 똑똑히 말이야. 메시 그만 잡 족정지 에 마치 공 먹이 파티를 먹이 와 공도래. 제가 라마야 고 말이지. 보빠라 담배요. 네파 게파 엠체 대다다는 엠체도 차요래. 그때 때문에 저 니니 요래 대sab지 능해요. 능해를 수축 팽기 요래. 영영 수축 팽기 레주비 하고 거래. 네와 좀지 이거는 저런 잡아간 통나야. 네 가글이 접하게 되버리스. 접하 가리스는 상태를 내. 상태를 차서 미적 시리즈 때문에 되래 요래. 오, 지양은 지금 일을 파트이를 이 점은 되버렸어. 너는 나타나면 바까래. 오, 상태를 내렸어. 그랬더니 네와 상태 몇당 저도 감성 심지 이종이 상태 네와 정지에도 요바데 상태가 해서 상태도 가진 치 상태이 시요면 적당만 보여 말이야. 가만히 보면 상태 저용이야 말이야. 이는 동행이 냠용요래. 동행 염용을 삼지에 싸주고요 하고 주승도 사지에 담지게 상축 선조를 못 치를 못 직장면에 삼지들을 못 치리 남도 은혜를 샤지 상태도 샘나오는 도가도 가서 뒤쪽이야 놓쳐고도 대회는 따따다 거기 사이점이 잠재거든요. 제가 시 마시선 오그 삼지들 남도 하지 도핑주의 대지 삼지를 뭐 제가 못 보대 저거래. 像这名写到的查到呢，桌子上我从这老上看着写到的查到的，第这个的哈个哈家家会有，写到的查到了的经常就有点嘛说，我老板说不买，有些你要买，没办法没人知道了。
So nowadays, it seems to be a time where everyone, the lamas and the disciples are examining each other, and also it is so said that we should examine each other. But then, many people actually do it. But actually, Rinpoche thinks, in his view, it is better if one actually examines oneself than the other. For example, if you're a lama, then the lama should examine himself, the lama should examine the lama. So when I'm teaching the Dharma, what am I actually saying, and what actually is the Dharma? The Dharma is to bring about benefit to sentient beings, and we benefit them if we give them, help them cultivate love in their heart, because all suffering that they experience comes from that notion of a self. The only antidote to that is love and compassion. So personally now I found that this is what has benefited me, and therefore I find that if I also help others and develop love and compassion, then it will also help them. It is just like when an ice block is melting, then like two ice blocks which were separate before melt into one water. And in that way, if we are really able to help others, cultivate love, because we have developed it ourselves, then this is how we connect to others, from mind to mind. It is through this altruistic intent that we connect our minds to others when we teach the Dharma. But Rinpoche said, I'm not a great Lama by any means. Actually, in this lifetime I have committed all of the 10 non-virtuous actions, and I've spent 20 years in prison. I'm only someone who has experienced a lot of suffering. And at that time, when I was in prison, I really had no refuge at all, except for the 3 jewels. Then I really began to understand the preciousness of the 3 jewels protection. And also all the difficulties I encountered, I found that this is my own karma. This is what the Buddha had said. All suffering without exception comes from wishing for one's own happiness. It comes from self-grasping. Self-grasping leads to afflictive emotions, and driven by them we accumulate karma. For example, killing and stealing and so on. All of the non-virtuous actions. And then I realized that all of the negative actions committed with the body, they ripen on the body. And all of the negative actions committed with the speech, like telling lies and harsh speech and so on, they ripen through the speech. And then the non-virtuous actions of the mind, like desire and the wish to harm others and so on, they ripen in the mind, as misery in the mind. So this is the experience that I have myself gained. And being in the midst of difficulties, then I ask myself, who is responsible for that? It is the afflictive emotions. And then where are they? They're still here in my own mind. So they are my own real enemy. It is not anyone else to blame. And all the difficulty I experience actually is a good thing, because it purifies my negative karma. It is like being cured from an illness or doing a surgery to be cured. So actually, therefore, I find that I had a quite happy time in prison. And I really understood the good qualities of Dharma practice, the power of Dharma practice I understood through these hardships. So I'm really only someone who shares experiences of having experienced hardships. I'm not a Lama that has many great qualities and much learning and so on. I'm more someone who has a lot of experience having committed negative actions like stealing and being in wars and so on. All of the 10 non-virtuous actions that you can imagine, I've committed in this life. In Tibet, there is a saying we're saying the best doctor is an old patient, an old sick person, someone who was sick before. So I'm more like such a doctor, and that is why some people like to listen to my instructions. And because I have experienced difficulties, overcome it through the Dharma, and so I'm just really sharing my experiences. And so having found the benefits of Dharma practice, I found it is important that everyone understands the workings of karma, cause and effect. For example, even if you just experience the smallest happiness if you have a cup of tea to drink, then what is the karma of that? It comes from having practiced generosity. And why do we practice generosity? Because of love. So it is a karma of love. Or for example, if someone gives you even just like a candy bar, for example, that's also karma. It is because we've given to others in previous lives and so on. So everything ripens, even in the most subtle way. And the slightest happiness comes even from a mind of love. And so this is the cause of happiness of all beings, humans or animals, all beings in the three realms, with or without a body. And that is one thing I've learned, that and for this reason cultivated full trust.
딜에 쉐네 딜 거 소지 삽지 싸우는 매 총지 세도 요리 떨도 요리 매달 가을 요리 대송네 다 미모고 그냥 가거도 이게 다들 가야지 피고 타도 다 보도 따도 따스는 가리치 파트 받던 소소를 야와를 도거리 되네 말 삽지 딜이 딜이 삽지 계속 다 우리 피하고 저거도 이제는 피는 아주 겹상을 해서 하고도 라는 생기고요. 라지 참이 되게 오래서 말을 생기고 저 마데 결심이 체랑 서결심인데 쉽지도 삼제도 문이 영화 있으면 피고 오래 좀때
And then there's this term lama, that is actually very important to understand the meaning of lama. It consists of two syllables, la and ma. And this was explained to Rinpoche by his own guru, Jime Dorje, when Rinpoche was very young. And he explained that La is like the life force energy. It is like the life force energy of all them, like the spirit or life force energy of all beings. For example, we put like little like children even on a high throne, like a turko. We put little children on a high throne, like turkos and so on, and we take refuge in them, like Rinpoche himself when he was very young. And then people come and they think of you, they rely on you. So just like that, that is that La. And then Ma means like mother, the mother of all sentient beings. So then if you're the mother of all sentient beings, you also have to protect them. You must have love for them. And the way to protect them is not through material things, not through food and so on, but you protect them if you develop love. So that is what they need. That is what they do not have. What they need is love. So therefore, I felt Jime Dorje, actually, my guru, said that if you have no love for those beings who rely on you as their refuge, then that is really the greatest downfall on your side. So therefore, that really made me afraid. If I have no love, that is actually terrible. So Rinpoche said in the beginning, when